Coming on this episode of Law Weekly, highlights from the recently concluded 63rd Annual General Conference of the Nigerian Bar Association with the theme, Getting It Right, Charting the Course of Nigeria's Nation Building. The week-long event featured very key discussions on three thematic areas of the economy, security, and the administration of justice. And this episode of the program will bring you some of the interesting discussions from the event. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Shola Shoyeli. Over 16,000 lawyers converged at the Moshood Abiola Stadium in Abuja, the venue of the 2023 Annual General Conference of the Nigerian Bar Association. This is the opening ceremony of the conference, and ahead of the arrival of the guest of honor, President Bola Tinubu, the stadium is already packed full. Joining the lawyers are ministers, top government officials, members of the legislature, the bench, traditional rulers, and much more. The arrival of the president kickstarts the event. In his opening remarks, the 31st president of the NBA, Yakubu Mekiao, speaks about his administration's agenda and why the association has chosen the theme, Getting It Right, Charting the Course for Nigeria's Nation Building.
At the onset of our administration, we made it very clear that our agenda will be driven or motivated by our modest understanding of our responsibility as members of the legal profession to the Nigerian people. And it is in line with this understanding, Your Excellency, that in January this year, the Nigerian Bar Association convened what we described as a national dialogue, where we curated the theme of the dialogue around three thematic areas of security, economy, and the administration of justice. Because we have very clear understanding that without security, we cannot have economic development, and without both security and economic empowerment, it will be difficult for a smooth administration of justice in our polity. We have decided to go on with this conversation around the thematic areas of security, economy, and administration of justice, because these are matters that are of grave concern to the people of this country. It is our intention that at the end of this meeting, we would have set an agenda on behalf of the people of this country, which we would use as a basis of engagement with Your Excellency's administration for the purpose of providing empowerment, for the purpose of securing the people of this country, and for the purpose of achieving smooth administration of justice in our country.
The keynote speaker, Tony Elumelu, identified the need to invest in brand Nigeria, the women, and especially the youth.
We salute the political will and courage that have been found to address the root causes of issues, to introduce policies for the long term, not for the short term. Let us build on this boldness, and let us say congratulations, Mr. President, for what has been done so far. Nation building is not a quick fix. Nation building entails sacrifices. We cannot keep doing the same thing and expect different outcomes. That is the definition of insanity. So things must change. Let us lead our nation building by laying those important foundations for our nation. Let us renew our infrastructure. When I talk of infrastructure, I do not mean just roads, not just ports or bridges or rail. We need to renew our commitment to our youth. Provide them with the means to succeed in Nigeria and not beyond Nigeria. This means not just investment in our education system, which of course is important, but investment in our entrepreneurial culture. Nigeria is a nation of entrepreneurs. You know me as an investor and champion of entrepreneurs and youth. I know the social and economic benefits and returns entrepreneurship creates. Let us create a joint government task force to champion at the highest level our young and our entrepreneurs. When entrepreneurs succeed, we succeed as a nation.
On his part, the newly appointed Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Mr. Lateef Fagbemi, speaks to his justice sector plan.
I wish to remark that barely a week in office, the enormity of the challenges on ground, as well as the huge expectations and the task on my shoulders, have manifested in no small dimension. I had cause to analyze what I wish to attain in the time as may be afforded by Mr. President. I have realized that with enormity of the task ahead or at hand, the most reliable approach in making significant progress will be to place the people at the center of every policy and strategy of the ministry. With the general support of Mr. President, my ministry will dedicate its time and resources in the promotion of people-centered justice, in the implementation of the much-needed legal and judicial reforms. We will maintain fair, transparent, and responsive process that will reflect the aspirations of Nigerians in the overall promotion of the rule of law and administration of justice.
When President Bola Tinubu mounted the podium, he called for a change of approach to governance and collaborative efforts between government and citizens to achieve progress.
The challenge is all for us to pull together a united Nigeria committed to national greatness. Unless we do it by ourselves, unless we employ change of mindset, we cannot achieve the desired progress. I'm not being cynical. I'm being factual. The hope is here. The critical changes and bold endeavors will be embarked on by this nation, depending on the cooperation and the collaboration of all of you in the private sector, the drivers of the economic growth and prosperity. Yes, it is a shame not to have electricity for the majority of homes in Nigeria. Yes, poverty is not a shameful thing, but not acceptable. We must banish it. So you all, rigorously thinking of investing in Nigeria must be a dream. But let's interrogate, how did we get here? The hardship. But can we continue to service external debt with over 90% of our revenue? It's a path to destruction. We cannot continue that. We have to make hard decisions. It takes unflinching courage, like men and women of the bar, defending our values, to bring about the changes that are necessary for our country to get up and be respected. But first of all, please employ one thing: Charity begins at home. It's all that you are pleading here. If the topic of tonight or this week must be what Nigeria hopes for, if we must achieve greatness as a nation, what do we do except take bold decisions? It could be painful at the beginning. In the medium term and long run, it's not about you. It's not about me. It's about the generation yet unborn.
After his speech, the president declared the conference open.
And to the legal mind of the bar, declare this conference open. Thank you very much. God bless Nigeria.
The very next day, Monday, the 28th of August, delegates and participants to the conference were back at the venue for discussions on the economy. Getting the economy right, decoding Nigeria's strategy for growth, diversification, inclusivity and sustainability is the focus of the first plenary session.
Unfortunately for us, the last 8 years in this economy has been one of unmitigated economic disaster. And when I talk about disaster, I'm talking about disaster of serious proportions. When President Buhari assumed power in 2015, the exchange rate was 180 naira to the dollar. Today, it's closing on 1,000. The devaluation on that is over 700 or 800%. There is no country in the world that can survive that kind of economic shock. But yet, as Nigerians, we're still standing, we're still resilient, and we're not saying much. Over this same period, we've lost $200 billion of our GDP. $200 billion is the GDP of Portugal. Ghana's GDP is 60 billion. Cameroon's GDP is maybe 40. So what we've lost in our GDP is a combination of maybe 6 or 7 African countries' GDP combined. But we are not complaining. We're not talking about it. We're not concerned about it. We're not up in arms about the fact that we have thrown $200 billion away in productivity.
Women on average take care of at least 4.7 people. So when we talk about inclusive growth, the agenda of women is very important because they're a key part and a significant proportion of this economy. But still, some of the numbers, and I rely heavily on a few reports, McKinsey Global Institute, for example, about 60 million of Nigerian households have sufficient income. And here you're talking about taking care of food, energy, housing, water and sanitation, healthcare, and discretionary spending. Still, over 130 million people are below empowerment line. It's not below the $1 that they talk about. You're talking about what practically families do need to take care of the basic needs outlined above in food, in healthcare, in education, in sanitation, in social security.
Other speakers highlight the challenges of doing business in Nigeria. They also proffer solutions for getting things right.
In terms of the things that we can do better, I will focus more on what our learned colleagues can do for us. Because a lot of the issues that will take us forward are constitutional and will require a lot of legal frameworks. I will start by saying that when you look at the nation as a whole, there's a lot of mistrust. We don't even believe in the judicial system anymore. And you can see it trending all over social media. All eyes are on the judiciary. And so what that means is that all eyes are on the Nigerian Bar Association, because you are the ones that can bring back the trust in the hearts and in the minds of the citizens of Nigeria.
We have the country polarized again along ethnic lines, along religious lines, along regional lines. The first thing this regime must do is to try to unite the country. You don't even need a national conference now, because we discovered that national conference also is good, but sometimes it's also a job for the boys. We have enough in the constitution of the country if it is properly and truthfully implemented. What we need now is a situation whereby the government, through its acts, will unite this country. What we need now is to have a nation where people look at each other as people from the same gods.
After this plenary session, the conference broke into various sessions which discussed different issues of the socio-economic impact of oil subsidy removal, legal and social challenges of mining in Nigeria, prioritizing infrastructure, artificial intelligence, ethics and the legal profession, and much more. Security was another thematic area which the leadership of the NBA had promised would be discussed extensively at this conference. And so this plenary session on Wednesday, August 30th, dwelt on crafting a strategic blueprint for security and prosperity. The National Security Advisor leads the conversation with a call for collaboration in the fight against insecurity.
As part of the government's plans to reposition the security architecture, the focus will be on closer interagency collaborations. In the same vein, we will engage in capacity building and the provision of material resources needed to win the fight against terrorism and other criminal activities. However, kinetic responses alone will not guarantee the defeat of terrorists. The support and buy-in of communities are very crucial in this regard. One of the critical strengths of Nigeria is its youthful population. However, this strength could quickly become a security apparatus if not adequately harnessed. Hence, this will be harnessed through job creation, skills development, and social intervention programs to bridge the socio-economic gap, to create an enabling environment for the youth to thrive.
Other members of the panel highlight the nation's security challenges while stating the way forward.
Immediate causes of rural banditry in Zamfara State was the indiscriminate allocation of virgin forest, forest reserves, game reserves, Fulani grazing areas, and home settlements as farmlands to farmers by successive governments in Zamfara from May 1999. That was the trigger that pushed the Fulani in the state to start attacking the farmers, a situation that gave rise to reprisals and counterattacks.
I am glad to report to this audience that although the challenges of terrorism and insurgency has been taken down in the Northeast, we are still on our guard because terrorism has a capacity of continuously mutating. Therefore, we are watching our flanks and we are doing everything to make sure we don't get it transmuted into any other form. We must support the government, and I'm glad that part of his campaign strategy, part of his campaign promises is that he will be putting more boots on ground. Therefore, the leadership of the Nigerian Police Force, supported by the National Security Advisors, the National Security Advisor, and men and women of goodwill, like all of you seated here today, will be returning to Mr. President and reminding him of his campaign promises, and we believe we will be working with the government to ensure that we're able to put more policemen on the ground, not just putting policemen on the ground, but putting policemen that are adequately trained, adequately equipped, adequately motivated, And if we do that, we have the capacity to turn around the situation in Nigeria for growth.
Non-kinetic approach to the fight against insecurity is again brought to the fore as the armed forces assure Nigerians of winning the war.
The military is keeping guard over the physical and social space to create the atmosphere for prosperity to take root again. The military, no doubt, with other security agencies, will deliver on its constitutional roles in this very asymmetric operational environment.
What we are doing differently is we are saying, or rather appreciating the challenge both in the domestic economy and the opportunities that are there for us to market Nigeria better, to access international capital, because despite the challenges that are confronting us, Nigeria still remains one of the countries with the strongest absorptive capacity. There are many countries that cannot absorb $100 billion of investment. Nigeria can absorb $1 trillion in investment. And we are going to market Nigeria in such a way.
At the closing plenary of the annual General Conference, which I moderated, panelists dwelt on setting an agenda for the reform of the justice sector in Nigeria. The immediate past Attorney General of Ekiti State, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Wale Fakunwoda, sets the tone for the conversation.
The number one concern today is judicial salaries and allowances. The last time, and we have said this, we said that at the session that I facilitated yesterday, the last time judicial salaries and allowances was reviewed was in 2007, or was it even in 2004? It is scandalous that our judicial officers have been on the same salary for over a decade. The second issue is, of course, the need for institutional reform within the structural hierarchy of the judiciary itself. Supreme Court, a case in point. How do we ensure that only matters of constitutional significance get to the Supreme Court? The issue of appointments, particularly for lawyers, for private lawyers, have also been a very sore issue. Why are we not allowed, private practitioners, why are we not allowed to aspire to either the Court of Appeal or the Supreme Court? Why?
The Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice is represented here by the Director of Civil Appeals, who reads the justice sector agenda.
Part of our agenda is to look critically at what existed and then build on the positives that can help the nation and its citizenry achieve early wins in the justice sector. In this regard, the Federal Ministry of Justice looks forward to continuing engagement and future collaboration with all stakeholders in the justice sector. Accordingly, under my watch, the ministry will work to enhance the functionalities of its personnel, systems, and structures to meet current realities.
For the governor of Plateau State, it's time to have a moral revolution in the country.
Access to justice is not just about law. In my opinion, the most critical component of access to justice are the human beings that administer justice, the human beings that dispense justice, the human beings that oversee the justice institution. Unfortunately, I dare say that we members of the legal profession have such a trust deficit when it comes to the issues of morality and conscience. And we must look at ourselves critically and tell ourselves the truth, that the time has come for us to have a moral revolution in Nigeria, because the economy of corruption is not sustainable. We therefore must come and tell ourselves that enough is enough and put an end, or at least agree that we must set processes in motion to reduce corruption in our society.
The leadership of the NBA says that the suggestions from all the sessions here will be shared with the new administration. They express confidence that it will be taken on board to achieve an accessible justice sector that promotes constitutional values, transparency, and provides justice for all. And that's the program this week. If you missed any part of it, you can find it on past episodes on our YouTube channel, so you can catch up after watching. Share your comments and feedback. It's always good to hear from you. We'll have more content from the NBA conference on the next episode of the program. Thank you and see you next week.